Mims, one of the biggest stories this year is tariffs, and we've got a guy today who's in the front lines of figuring out this complicated matter.
And I'm so excited that we get to bring him to listeners because he's in a company that I really didn't even know existed. And I certainly didn't understand they were as big as they are. They have basically as many employees as General Motors.
Magna International is a big name in Canada. It is a big name in the automotive industry, the largest North American automotive supplier out there. Huge business in the U.S., huge business in North America, huge business globally, and we have the CEO. And that's next. Magna International is a powerhouse in the automotive industry, manufacturing the parts that go into cars all around the world. Its clients are the car companies, or OEMs. To serve them, Magna has 342 manufacturing operations in 28 countries. All of that means that CEO Swami Kotagiri has his fingers on the pulse of global trade and what the trade war means for a major industry.
I would say there is definitely a stress in the system, right? I think when we were dealing with the 2007-2008 financial crisis or COVID and, then the whole inflation because of the Russia-Ukraine war and the semiconductor, the one thing we all have come to understand better is the visibility of the supply chain, right? And I think people have taken a calmer approach now. I think nobody is reacting right away.
The automotive industry is trying to navigate the latest trade war while at the same time trying to pivot their businesses to a more digital world and facing new rivals from China that are offering up compelling electric vehicles. As supplier to those Chinese companies, Magna is also seeing how they work up close.
How do they design? What is their design cycle? How are they thinking about it? And we are able to bring some of those learnings to other parts of the world.
What it adds up to is a very complicated time to be in the car business.
Because of all these changes, there is a possibility for new entrants to be coming in with completely new mode of thinking. So you add all of that, what used to be always a complex industry is now become a four-dimensional chessboard.
From the Wall Street Journal, I'm Tim Higgins.
And I'm Christopher Mims. This is Bold Names, where you'll hear from the leaders of the bold-named companies featured in the pages of the Wall Street Journal. Today we ask, how does one run a complicated global parts business when you're stuck between a changing industry and a trade war?
Swami, welcome. So much to talk to you about today, but I think a lot of people thought we were going to see a huge spike in new car prices because of all the tariffs announced by the Trump administration this past spring. Why hasn't that occurred yet?
Yeah, I think the best thing is not to have a knee-jerk reaction to anything. And this was one of that instance where things have obviously moved a lot from where the conversation first started in January to where we are, right? It still remains to be seen, but if you kind of summarize where we stand with the slight change in the USMCA, and there is a progression of that change happening in the next 2 years if it stays as as it is explained today. All said and done.
Let me just interrupt here because this is my role on this podcast. When you say USMCA compliance, for those of us who aren't as well voiced in this industry as you are, you mean getting stuff from Canada and Mexico, right? Parts.
Yeah.
The trade agreement, this is what replaced NAFTA.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. In the automotive world, like anything else, we have so many acronyms, but very simply stated, you are right.
Absolutely. And this is super confusing, right? Because earlier this year, it looked like just about every trade partner possible was going to have see incredible increases in tariffs. And that this spring, you had a speech in the Detroit area where you compared this thread of trade war to the automotive industry as kind of a mix of disruption that was that we saw during the Great Recession, that 2007, 2010 period, and then the pandemic. What did you mean by that? And do you still feel that?
Yes, I do, right? I mean, if you look at our normal industry variables, we are a long-term cyclical nature business. Over the last few years, what we have added to that complexity is the technology landscape changing, which is electrification, autonomy, and connectivity. And with all of these things coming into play, consumer preferences have changed, right? They have much more optionality, and they're also figuring out what it is they really want.
It's not just about horsepower anymore.
Absolutely not, right? And I always give the story in the past where, we used to look at horsepower and the fit and finish and the style and what is the projection of your personality, which car speaks of me, really. And now you go talk to them, they say, like, where is the Wi-Fi and what is the connectivity and can I stream my apps? And, there's very few people who sit and talk about the color of the car and so on. So
kids today.
Cars, it's like they're the ultimate phone accessory these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where's my Android Auto? My Apple CarPlay.
Ouch.
Yes, exactly, right.
It's a place to scroll at stoplights, of course, until we get the self-driving ones.
Yeah, it's well put, right? And add on top of that is the changing industry landscape, right? Mm-hmm. Because of all these changes, there is a possibility for new entrants to be coming in, right, with completely new mode of thinking. So you add all of that, what used to be always a complex industry is now become a four-dimensional chessboard.
We're going to talk about new entrants later on. Tim and I, of course, are obsessed with new entrants in the auto industry. But I want to get high level with you for a minute, because I think in a way that a lot of people don't appreciate, you're like the real estate industry. Your supply chains are a primary indicator of what's going on with the economy. And then you, as a supplier to all of these other automakers, you're Oz behind the curtain here. And you have a unique visibility into all of that. And so when you're looking at the impact on your supply chains, what is the state of the U.S. economy right now through the lens of people, making their second biggest purchase after what they spend on rent?
It's a very interesting analogy, right? And, what I always like to talk about when we talk internally, even what we are doing today is a decision that has been made 2 years ago, and the results will be seen 2 years from now, right? As we're putting capital in, it's for producing vehicles or parts component systems for vehicles that are going into production in 27 or 28, really, right? And all the sourcing decisions were made maybe in 22, maybe in 23, right? So that kind of gives you the cycle of decision making in this industry. So if you're thinking about what happens today and read headlines, and the expectation of the people is, so what are you doing? Because we heard this in the newspaper today. Not really a whole lot, right? That's why I think you have to be constantly thinking of your strategy in terms of how do you adapt, how do you accommodate, and how do you innovate? And most of the variables that you consider is how much can you be flexible in your strategy.
So you're building adaptability into your... That makes sense to me because, of course, auto analysts have said recently the next 4 years are going to be kind of the most uncertain it's been in the auto industry in the past 50, maybe, because of the head fake on EVs, people not transitioning to EVs as quickly as they thought. So are you, in a sense, trying to make yourself more adaptable for this uncertain time that's coming?
Absolutely, right? From our perspective, yes, but I don't think this can be done by any one individual party, right? For example, a OEM comes with a platform, and
OEM being a car company.
There you go, another acronym, yeah? Original equipment manufacturer, as they call it, the car company. They come and tell us, let's say, I'm going to make 100,000 vehicles, right? Yeah. They're looking at their crystal ball, looking at their consumer data. So they come and they give us. That means we have to be able to plan the volume expectations based on the customer, right? So you put in the capital, you put in the capacity, you plan your labor, everything according to that. So what it means is if you don't make 100,000 vehicles at that point of time per year, then you have capacity that's sitting, that's empty, right?
Money on fire, essentially.
Exactly. And there are certain parts of the capital which you can flex. For example, if I have a stamping press and I'm making parts, I take the die out and I can put a different die and make parts for something else. But if I have an assembly line that makes a EV or assembling things for a system, doesn't matter whether it's a mirror or a seat or something, you're supposed to make 100,000. It's not that I can just take that and make something else with it. Right. So it's just sitting. It's dedicated capital. I think that's where the flexibility needs to be thought through. And so the OEM or the car company and the material supply, everything, it's not easy to flex at the switch, right? You come today and say, I just want to make a change. It takes time.
Yeah.
But if you think collectively and say, maybe let's plan for 60,000, and if the demand is there, how quickly can we get there? And let's plan through that. Great. Let's share the benefit. If it goes down, how do we change and manage the risk?
We just heard Kotagiri talk about the challenges of the trade war. Next, how does he navigate the uncertainty?
How precarious are things right now?
It's difficult, I can tell you that. Pit in the stomach sometimes, right? But that's what's gotten us through, and I think that's what is very important for the industry right now.
It makes me think, when I was in business school back there in the Detroit area all those years ago, we were using pen and paper, and we didn't have computers and all these fancy
I gotta say, I'm really
technology.
surprised, Tim. I thought you went to art school. I don't know if I'm excited or disappointed.
I just remember being in class, and my classmates, who were all working at the suppliers. I mean, these were people who had some horror stories dealing with the large car companies. I mean, talk about having very little leverage, right? And back then, there were winners and losers on these car programs, right? You were kind of making a bet years in advance. The volumes might fluctuate, but the fluctuation maybe was 10 or 20%, right? What's the fluctuation rate now?
When the car company gives us, Tim, a volume expectations, we have our own viewpoint, right? And this viewpoint has been built on data from the past years. So the challenge now becomes when you have a platform that's new, right?
Yeah.
It's a new EV vehicle,
perhaps, an electric vehicle, right?
So there, I think we're all kind of playing a little bit of a guessing game here. We have seen some platforms where the current projections or the current production volumes are running at 30% of the original planning volume.
30%, yeah.
And
30%.
obviously, you can't name names here, but we could all guess.
There's good and bad, right? There are some which have done well. The things have been there all along, and it's just become a lot more difficult when the volume fluctuations are that high. I think the industry knows how to deal with 10, 15, 20%, right? So I think that's where this whole friction of commercial recoveries come into play. Market share is more fragmented, and as you know, automotive industry is all about scale and efficiency, right?
Right.
So I think that is the magnitude and the crux of the problem that we're all trying to deal with.
I mean, it's pretty bleak out there, which is, in that environment, we're seeing auto parts giant Marelli recently filed for bankruptcy. Their CEO said in some court filings that they had been really struggling since COVID-19 pandemic, but that the weight of the Trump administration tariffs really kind of pushed them over the edge. You have a visibility into the supply chain, because you've got a bunch of smaller companies providing you materials and parts and whatnot that you then package and put together and build and sell to car companies. So you can see where there's tension out there. Are you worried about more suppliers going out of business? I mean, how precarious are things right now?
Tim, I would say there is definitely stress in the system, right? I think when we were dealing with the 2007, 2008 financial crisis or COVID and, then the whole inflation because of the Russia-Ukraine war and the semiconductor, the one thing we all have come to understand better is the visibility of the supply chain, right? Mm-hmm. And I think people have taken a calmer approach now. I think nobody is reacting right away. And, the ones that have survived have learned to evolve. And I'll give our Magna example. A good one, about 20 years is the time frame that I look at, right? In 2004, 2005, Magna was a $20 billion company, right? And North America was making 15 million units. Interestingly, today we still are about 15 million units. And Magna is a $40 billion company. Goes back to what I was saying, right? You have to think through the product in terms of being disciplined to say, I'm not going to do everything for everyone. Here is what I'm good at. I'm just going to stick to that. So if you have that disciplined approach, we can continue to. So you need to have a strategy and, not be reacting to headlines every day. It's difficult, I can tell you that. Pit in the stomach sometimes, right? But that's what's gotten us through. And I think that's what, is very important for the industry right now.
Well, when you talk about that growth, you've seen some in the U.S., right? But the industry really has grown dramatically in the last generation from China, and you've seen some of that.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about new strategies, that's a place where we're also seeing new strategies. And I have to think, the last time I was in Detroit, which was just a few months ago, the sense of trepidation about the rise of Chinese electric car makers was just palpable. I mean, what is it that the Chinese automakers are doing so well that the Western automakers haven't yet adopted or haven't yet figured out?
A few things come to mind, Tim. Like if you didn't have the legacy, right? You didn't have an assembly shop or a body shop or a certain way of doing things, and you have installed capacity and you have a process in place. You have a fresh sheet of paper, so you can think through how you would process the manufacturing side of things. That's one. The second thing I see when your new organizations are coming, even the organizational architecture is a little bit different. What I mean by that is you don't have a structural engineering department and a thermal department and a fluids department and a power department. And when they all come together, you have so many interfaces because you have to, at the end, have a holistic system. I give a good example, right? Is 5-10 years ago, you used to have mirrors and you used to have cameras and you used to have, visibility of the inside of the cabin. Mirrors were sourced by the purchasing department. Cameras were sourced by a different department. Each one had a ECU of its own, right? And
ECU being kind of the central computer for that function.
Thanks for holding me accountable there. So I think if you think through, right, really, you can sit back and say, okay, I get the image from the camera anyway. I have this electric compute unit that analyzes the data and puts it together, and my mirror is already there. Do I need to have two of this, or should I just have one compute, right? Mm-hmm. And, with the change in the compute, with the change in the powertrains going to EVs, with the new electrical architectures coming in place, connectivity playing a big role, how you're designing a car is different. But more importantly, how you're going to make the car is also becoming very different, right? And if you didn't have the legacy of an existing assembly plant or so on, you're able to do it very differently. And Chinese have taken advantage of that and are moving really fast.
And it's fascinating to see a company like Xiaomi, right? Not only a Chinese smartphone manufacturer, but they partner with many other companies to make all kinds of home consumer electronics, suddenly coming out with a car that apparently people love.
It looks like a Porsche. I mean, it looks pretty neat.
Yeah, and the factory itself, the machine to make the machine, as Musk said, is apparently really well designed. As cars become more and more like consumer electronics, it begs the question, what is different or the same as manufacturing consumer electronics in terms of reshoring that manufacturing?
Yeah, there is two aspects of it, right? Automation where it's needed and where it's useful, it's fantastic and it can do a great job. So that's one piece. The second part of there are some which are very difficult to automate, at least at this point of time. Never say never. For example, you cut and sew seats, right? The dexterity that's required to go make that process automated, some ways to go. So that's labor intensive.
I thought that Figure, which of course is partnering with BMW, already had a robot that can put away groceries. Are you telling me these things can't sew seats?
Yeah. When you're talking of the one question you asked about consumer electronics and cars, I will agree humbly that I'm a dated automotive guy, but you have to still keep in mind that when you buy, I think you mentioned it, right? It's one of the largest purchase you'll make in your lifetime. I don't think you will take very kindly if it doesn't start or if it breaks down after 8 months and you need to go buy a different one. So the robustness and the reliability and the safety that goes with, this product, I think is still pretty damn complex. There is one thing that people tend to underestimate. But with that said, we have to learn from the other industries, and there's been phenomenal progress. Like you gave the example of Xiaomi, right? You talk about EVs, it's really a confluence of three important things which will solve the problem. A high voltage electrical architecture, like 800 volts or 1000 volts.
So that means just the voltage of the power system in the car, where the electricity is flowing and the battery, and this high voltage means you can charge the car faster and all that stuff.
There you go. You got it. That's, I think if you have a megawatt charging station and if you have the electrical architecture that can take that and the right battery technology, then you can charge 300-400 kilometers range in 5 minutes. And you've heard BYD and a few others talk about it, which means the ecosystem for the high charge has to be there. You need to have new vehicles with the new electrical architecture and the battery technology, and it's making progress as you've seen over the last 10 years. If that comes now, the paradigm has shifted, right? Do you really have range anxiety? If you can charge your car to 300-400 kilometers in 5 minutes, you're okay. So do I need as big a battery as I have today? Not really. Right. So I'm not going to spend $8,000 for a battery if I'm the car manufacturer. So that'll shift or pivot the thinking completely of EV penetration, right? That's why we at Magna have always been saying the penetration might be slow and it's not coming at the rate that everybody expected. And surprisingly, if you go back, look at Magna 5, 6, 7 years ago, Tim, I don't know if I told you this, but we said by 2030, there will be 30% EV penetration globally.
This was dramatically lower than everybody else's predictions.
Yes, and we were called names, which I will not repeat here, but it was like too conservative.
EV hater.
EV hater.
Did you get, you were proven maybe even ambitious now in hindsight, right? Did you get a bunch of apology letters? Do you get emails from people?
No, I wish, but they're now saying is like, really? You think it's going to be 30? We don't think so. It's going to be 25. Okay, fine. The whole idea being here is that, the EV is a sustainable trend, right? It's going to happen. And because of some of the reasons I gave you, you have to really invest where you can differentiate. And that's what the industry is going through is like, right. How do you consolidate? Where do you really put money where you need to, or what do you have to invest in until you differentiate? You just don't, go invest in everything.
We reached out to Morelli. A spokesperson said the main issues constraining the company's working capital were the market pressures impacting the entire automotive industry, along with lower production volumes during the past year.
As Kotagiri tries to navigate uncertain forecasts, he also is keeping an eye on the rising Chinese automotive industry.
We do believe in the long run, Chinese are going to be taking a share, right? To what extent, who knows, but they will play a role.
So what can US automakers learn from China? That's next.
The old way of the automotive industry, and we kind of alluded to this earlier, is to grow sales, to grow share. The idea was you had to have new sheet metal, new cars on the lot. And really, maybe what we're seeing now is there's new ways to make money in the industry, whether it's through the digitalization of the experience or the ride or whatnot. And you are in the North America industry, which, because of trade protection, has not seen the influx of Chinese competitors into the U.S. yet, but you are seeing kind of the rise of these electric car companies in China really displacing the Western giants. Concerns about Europe. Where do you see yourself playing here in the next few years as we talk about where you make your investments and how you kind of straddle that?
I think it's a combination, Tim. Like going back to my example of how we doubled our company in the last 20 years, well, the volumes were flattish in North America. One of the ways we did it by staying focused on the products that we can differentiate and increase the content. That's one. And we had our footprint in Europe. And over these 20 years, you saw the influx of the European OEMs into the North American market. So we had our content and share there. And if you look at China, we started off primarily going to China to support our existing customers, which were, the German and the Detroit 3. But as of last year, we are about $5.5 billion in sales in China, and about 65% of that is with Chinese OEMs, right? And we continue to grow. Last year, I think we grew at 15%, in China. So,
Which, by the way, this is my favorite trade war fact right now. I just want to put a fine point on this for our listeners. People think, China's becoming entirely self-reliant. You're seeing huge increases in your sales to China.
Yeah, no. The interesting thing for us is like we make in China for China, right?
Build where you sell.
Build where we sell, right? And that applies not just to China; it's pretty much everywhere, right? Whether it's North America or Europe.
It was the old axiom of the automotive industry. I mean, it goes back to the Ford days. That was kind of the idea, right?
And if you sit back and think about it, just like we were with the Europeans, and when they came to North America, we came with them, and we are participating with the Chinese in China right now, the Chery, the Geely, the BYDs, the Xiaopangs, and all of these people. And, as they come to the different parts of the world, we are already in their ecosystem. We are partners, right? And that's one way to continue to grow. But we are learning from that too. How do they design? What is their design cycle? How are they thinking about it? And we are able to bring some of those learnings to other parts of the world. And, we do believe in the long run, Chinese are going to be taking a share, right? To what extent, who knows, but they will play a role.
I want to talk to you about what we have to look forward to, because even though there's this deceleration in the growth of EVs, it feels like cars are changing faster now than at any point since the Model T. I mean, I really believe that, and I've experienced it firsthand. Given all the...
'Cause you were there at the Model T. Is that what you're trying to say?
That's right. I was. I'm a vampire. I'm a vampire elf. I'm immortal. So given all the headwinds and the opportunities that we're talking about for EVs, is there a part or a component or a sub-assembly of the vehicle where you see opportunity for Magna to, move into, to add value? Where do you want to go when you're given this once-in-a-generation opportunity?
Yeah, great question. And we are really excited about it, right? The good thing is there is 80% roughly of what Magna provides you need in any car, whether it's EV or electric or hydrogen or whatever it is.
Like mirrors and seats and all that.
Mirrors and seats and structures and, all the things that go with it, right? In the powertrain business, we prided ourselves in the all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. The specialty is not just making the product, but how it functions, right? Whether it's torque vectoring and the safety that it provides, the integration and so on. So when you bring all of those drivable functions into an EV, it's not just putting a motor and an inverter together. It's how the vehicle behaves when you have this e-drive in place. That's what we're able to bring together. So that's the exciting part for that business, how we can play. And one of our core business where we make structures for vehicle, right? Whether it's A pillars or B pillars or doors or floor or, the frame for the chassis, engine cradles, all of that stuff. It's a very core business for Magna. It doesn't matter what material, steel, aluminum, composite, plastic, anything. And if you sit back and look at that content will be there no matter what. So higher content per vehicle, better addressable market, a lot of agnostic products that will go on any vehicle, doesn't matter how it's powered. That's the exciting part for Magna looking forward.
So you can get a bigger part of the pie, even though the vehicle is simplifying. And, we all know we have this tidal wave of sub $30,000 EVs coming, whether or not the Chinese are allowed into the American market or not.
Absolutely. And also to add to it is with the different systems that we've been able to work with over the last 65 years with OEMs and internally. And if we also assemble cars for OEMs. Right. So there is that system knowledge for us to go and tell them that, hey, you're doing this, battery enclosure, you're doing this floor. Here is some of the commonality that I can bring together and eliminate different things, right? So it goes back to the system integration that we're seeing and learning from the rest of the world, but internally of our tribal knowledge over the last 60 years. We believe that's also a differentiator.
Right. I mean, Magna for long had this dream of being almost a final assembly kind of operator, almost like a Foxconn of the auto industry. But I look at Silicon Valley now and Waymo, San Francisco, where I am, and I'm seeing them everywhere. And you're working with them to outfit its self-driving cars at an Arizona factory, right? You're helping, I guess, the final integration, putting in the sensors and whatnot.
That's correct.
So is this, you and I have talked for years about autonomous vehicles, robot cars. Is the driverless car hype finally becoming real?
I go back again to not trying to give a penetration rate, but I think I've always said assisted driving has long ways to go, right? I mean, Just imagine the comfort, convenience, and safety that these features are providing. And there is a long ways to go in terms of content and penetration there. I still believe the autonomous is, from a technological perspective, is there. We got to get through, the 99.99% reliability and acceptance of people, because the expectation of safety and reliability is different, even much higher than what you would expect from a human, right? With all those things, I believe the first opportunity is in a more planned, zoned areas. And, after that, it continues. Just like anything, right? The continuous improvement, and at some point it becomes very noticeable and gets to be exponential rather than linear. I don't think we have hit that point yet.
Yeah. Swami, such a great chance to chat with you here. Maybe we'll have you back in the future to talk about flying cars. Who knows what's out there?
No, I appreciate it, guys. And thanks for keeping me on track and not letting me use a lot of car talk and acronyms.
When we come back, Mims and I break down what we just heard from Magna CEO Swami Kotagiri. Stay with us. So, Mims, what do you think? It seems like a very bleak picture that Swami paints here of the automotive industry. Not just tough, but really tough. Four-dimensional chess, I think is the term.
Yeah, whenever somebody starts talking about four-dimensional chess, I worry that all their trend lines and their internal projections are just down and to the right. And they're like, oh, but in the long run, this is going to pay off for us. It does seem like there's this crazy transition that they're going through. It's not just that EVs are coming, it's that everyone guessed wrong about how fast they're going to arrive. And he's the guy who has to plan 2 years from now.
Right. Everybody guessed wrong except him. I mean, he was pretty close to being more realistic about what it was going to be. But he's really thinking about how to make the parts that go into the guts of the car, how to do that more efficiently. And instead of literally reinventing the wheel every time.
And It made me optimistic, oddly, because he was willing to allude to the fact that these future vehicles are simpler, and so to remain nimble, to play that 4D chess, he is going to assemble more of these vehicles, and more of the vehicle will be standard. And that's already what he says is making Chinese car manufacturers so much more nimble. So it makes me think that whatever the special sauce is that has allowed these Chinese manufacturers to offer these, $20,000 excellent EVs is coming to America. It's coming to the world. It's not like China has a monopoly on this. And he's going to help facilitate that, partly from his learnings in China. That was fascinating too.
Well, it's interesting. That's how Toyota made its way into the U.S. And one of the things that General Motors did was they set up a kind of a factory to work together to learn how to. The Japanese learned how to work with U.S. workers, and the Americans learned the Japanese way of making cars. But it's interesting. You bring up this idea of Magna in China learning from these Chinese upstarts and how that's could spread. But the challenge is the Western automakers and the systems in place makes it very hard to put those learnings into effect with his customers. So that'll be interesting.
I love that he's the guy who's simultaneously trying to bring us into the EV future, and he is the primary enabler of folks who are like, I just want 3 tons of American steel. Like, give me my Ford F-150. When GM says, because this just happened, we're going to stop this factory where we're going to make EVs, and instead we're going to make V8 engines there for trucks. He's got to be involved in those discussions. And so this split in mindset and this division between Americans' desires on the one hand for EVs and on the other hand for, our eternal love for gas guzzlers. He's got to serve both those markets right now.
Yeah, he's better positioned than some big suppliers out there, in part because a huge percentage of the business is not what they call powertrain. With the powertrain, they're not dealing with they're not in engines, they're not in the motors. They have a part of the business that's in motors, but the bulk of the business is seats and mirrors and stuff in the car. And so no matter who the winner is in the future, whether it's electric cars or gas-powered cars or robot cars, you still need seats, right? And you still want to have a comfortable seat, and the seat race is super competitive as well. You want the coolest seat out there, right? You want one that it's got like 20 different positionings for your back, heats your bum, maybe cools it in the summer.
I mean, especially as Americans age.
The special edition of Bold Names where we go deep on seats.
Seat talk.
Seat talk.
America's aging like everywhere else. Seats matter, y'all.
Yeah. Hold on to your butts.
And that's Bold Names. Our producer is Danny Lewis. Michael Laval and Jessica Fenton are our sound designers. Jessica also wrote our theme music.
Our supervising producer is Catherine Millsop. Our development producer is Aisha Al-Muslim. Scott Salloway and Chris Zinsley are the deputy editors, and Falana Patterson is the Wall Street Journal's head of news audio.
For even more, check out our columns on WSJ.com. We've linked them in the show notes.
I'm Tim Higgins.
And I'm Christopher Mims. Thanks for listening.